6.6, and I'll just read it one more time so we're in order here. So consideration of recommendation from Health Services Department regarding participation in the Clear Lake Cyanobacteria Task Force. And we have, what's that? I heard her say something. So we have Craig Weatherby and Sarah Ryan here to present on this item.
Well, I guess we'll get started. As we pull this up, I'm Craig Weatherby, Director of Environmental Health. I am joined by the ever amazing partner, Sarah Ryan from the Big Valley Tribe. Before we get started, we do get everything going. I just want to thank Sarah and the tribes for the work that they're doing in this. Without the monitoring work that Sarah and her team are doing, the county would be absolutely blind to what is a very dangerous situation. No, our lake is not horrible. I don't care what people say. Our lake is amazing. Our lake is a living creature. It's its own entity. And just like any living creature, it's got good days and bad days. Sometimes our lake wakes up with its hair in a big old tangle and needs a little more time, right? So we're going to talk about a very specific topic, right? Cyanotoxins, right? I agree. Harmful algal bloom does sound a little bit all-encompassing, and it is way more concentrated than that. Cyanotoxin is the danger that we're talking about here today. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to start the presentation, and then we'll talk a little more specifically on some of the things that we're asking in terms of what we ask the board to help us with.
Thank you, Craig. Good morning, supervisors. And as some of you have been around for a little while, probably remember that this work group presents to the board approximately once a year to give an update on what's going on with cyanobacteria and cyanotoxins in the lake and to report on the work group. I'm calling it work group as opposed to task force. Just to clarify, there is a Clear Lake Cyanobacteria Task Force, which is something that Big Valley Bandapomo Indians and Elam Indian Colony developed back in 2014 when we first started monitoring the toxin levels in the lake. And thankfully, because of the hard work of everybody who's been involved, we no longer, we don't meet on a regular basis because there's so much of the work that we are trying to start in terms of research, funding, signage, communication, collaboration, all of that is happening right now. So this work group, however, is something that the board asked to be set up a number of years ago, I believe around 2018, just to make sure we were all on the same page because, you know, Big Valley is putting out the toxin data. It's something that the tribal council said, yes, please do that. Communicate, you know, the information that the state has on cyanotoxins and put it out there as a transparent, informative piece of information. And so there's no questions about that. And so we have been doing that. And thankfully, this work group has come together and has been meeting periodically over the years, a multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency work group that is communicating and collaborating on the issues and keeping up with it. So in terms of this presentation, just as we've done in previous years, talk a little bit about cyanobacteria impacts, the progress that we've made together as a group, and also current lake conditions. Next slide, please. And again, it's really so that we can be proactive, we can be informed and educated. I truly believe with all the education that we're doing at Big Valley about cyanobacteria and cyanotoxins, I am amazed at the level of conversation that is happening online and in meetings where I believe we have a pretty educated group of, you know, community members, the county members about the issues. And you know, years ago when it first started, you know, people were calling it the wrong name and they were jumping to conclusions. There's still some of that going on. I try to find it, search it out on Facebook if I see it, and you know, and I know others are as well. We're trying to educate people, so not to be scared of cyanotoxins. This is a natural lake, as has been said, but we need to be proactive and just aware of the potential risk and, you know, face it head on. And I believe that's what this work group helps do. And we also try to be on the same page. So as I said, the tribe is putting the data out, and it's great when, you know, it's once the county gets a lot of phone calls, I'm sure, Water Resources and Environmental Health probably gets a lot of phone calls on it. The two cities do, and they are members of this work group, and we stay in touch with each other about the trends and everything. Okay, next slide, please. So cyanobacteria, that is a picture, a microscopic picture of Dolichospermum, which is one of the main cyanobacteria in the lake. It does not seem to have toxins, though. So I think it's quite beautiful. Looks like a pearl necklace to me. All cyanobacteria are capable of photosynthesis. That's what kind of confused people, and that's why they called it algae so many years ago. It is a bacteria, as Betsy was saying in the previous presentation. And it rises up and gets sunlight, and it eats the food that's in there, eats the nutrients, all the nutrient problems we have in the lake, and then it goes back down each day. So that's what it looks like in lakes and creeks. It looks very different. You can't see these blooms. They do produce oxygen. So all of us who are out there doing water monitoring, we see high dissolved oxygen in these areas, and also high pH. I've seen a pH of over 10. It's supposed to be around 7, and actually the standards for the lake for recreational exposure is 6.5 to 8.5. So we are getting way off the charts in terms of pH, which could be one of the reasons why people have some skin issues with it, just because the pH is getting so basic. Cyanobacteria, as has been the messaging of the county for since the beginning, it is a natural, one of the oldest organisms, and it helped create the oxygen for what we breathe. However, when there's too much and there's a bloom and it looks like pea soup, or you have toxins, that's when it's problematic. It's not something that's eaten by fish, so we can't really just assume that it's going to be taken care of in the food web. And when it dies and it goes back down, it just becomes food again for a new year of cyanobacteria. They do seed themselves, so it will keep coming back until there are solutions to actually get it out of, either control it as it's blooming or get it out of the bottom of the lake. Next slide, please. So harmful algal bloom, again, it's not an algae, but this is the term that's used nationally, and I have a problem with it too because it's not algae, but HABs is the term, and that is when there's an overgrowth of it. So when we're out there doing our monitoring out around the lake, and Big Valley goes twice a month in the summer months, we look for, is there a visible bloom? Is it green? Is it slightly green? Is it a matte? It all depends on which cyanobacteria there is growing there. They all have different looks, different smells, different toxins they can produce, and sometimes it's a combination of them, and the only way to really tell is to look under a microscope, and the only way to know if it has toxins is to send it to a lab. Their toxins can be present even when there's no cyanobacteria, and the way that happens is, I always like to say, cyanobacteria is like a water balloon, and the toxins are the water that's inside. So if you break that, if you lyse the cell, if you kill it with an algicide or something, or it's dying in some other way, the toxins spill out into the water, which is why the drinking water systems that are, serve 65% of the county, have to do various levels of filtration before they do chlorination, because chlorination will break those cells open, and then you have to deal with the toxins, which are much smaller, much harder to get out. So it's better to filter them out. So again, toxins can be present without visible signs of algae or cyanobacteria. And it's not the same as green algae. Green algae, you put a pencil in the thing, you lift it up or a stick, and if it's hanging off like vegetation, that is green algae. That's good. That's what fish eat. It's a good part of the food web. Cyanobacteria is more slimy. You try to pick it up, you try to skim it out, and it's a slime bath. It's not vegetative. Yeah.
One of the ways to describe it, and we get a lot of complaints each year, a lot of phone calls. People will call and say that somebody just dumped 5 gallons of paint in the lake. So it looks like latex paint floating on the surface. Mm-hmm. And it has that level of consistency, and that it's a key distinction between beneficial algae and cyanobacterias.
Yep. And that is the turquoise paint one is a famizomenon usually, and that can be a toxin producer as well, but doesn't seem to be in the lake. And again, there's several genera that are dominant in the lake, and Dolichospermum, famizomenon, they don't seem to be problematic. Microcystis is a problematic one. Mm-hmm. Next slide. So work group stakeholders, these, over the years that we've been meeting, we've had, the Lake County has had environmental health, water resources, just the health services. City of Clear Lake and City of Lakeport have sent people. Oh, the county also has a drinking water, the special districts folks, and then Big Valley is present. We've had just other groups over the years, but this is kind of the key folks at this point.
At some points, particularly last summer, we had up to 20 participants in the work group from state down to local. We had active voices at every level participating, and it's hard to keep that group focused on one topic. We tend to wander a little bit, but the point of bringing this up is to show that the work is not just being done in an echo chamber, right? There's not just a couple of people sitting there going, yeah, we're doing great. No, this is going out, this work is being done, and it's going to the state. They oftentimes come back to us to look at how we're putting these meetings together, and they're very proud of the work that we do. We're very proud of the work that we do. I know our group, each and every member of the group puts a lot of effort into making sure they understand the science of what we're dealing with. And it's specifically that science that we're trying to use to make better decisions, better communications, more educational materials. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Next slide, please. So, and as you probably know, and it's certainly been said here before, it's not like just Clear Lake has the issue. If you go on to, the state has a map, and I think it's probably the next slide, but anybody who's doing any cyanotoxin monitoring, they have a mywaterquality.ca.gov. Is where you can go on and look at all of the blooms, and toxin levels throughout the state. But even it is a worldwide issue. We certainly see some pretty bad pictures, and also hear about really high toxic levels in other countries. Pretty much anybody with a shoreline that has a lot of development on it, you're going to see some sort of situation like this. This is Upper Klamath Lake, and that bloom is, also visible by satellite in terms of the pigments that it produces. These things can be picked up by satellite, and so we can see that, throughout the world, cyanobacteria is an issue. An overgrowth of it. It should be there. It should be a part of it, but it shouldn't be dominating the system, because then you have all these other negative impacts. Next slide, please. Here's that picture I was talking about. So if you go to mywaterquality.ca.gov, you can see it is focused on Clear Lake there, but throughout the state, where you see, we try to keep the colors. So if it's green, that means it's not, it doesn't have toxin levels that are problematic, could be even non-detect. Yellow is caution, so it has toxin levels of a certain level, basically 0.8 to 6 micrograms per liter of microcystin. Orange is warning, and red is danger. Each one of those levels has associated recommendations of risk, and basically recommended not to do certain things. So if it's at danger levels, it is recommended to not be boating in that area because of the spray that happens and the aerosolization of the toxins. And with caution, it's recommended you don't eat any shellfish from the area. So there's a host of things, but statewide there are a number of lakes that are monitored, and their data is all on that website. Next slide, please. As we've all been saying, the potential impacts, of course, the economic development is one of the biggest ones, because people do react to information, and they also react to what they see. And so that's why it was decided, the discussion was years ago, if we hit it head on, and we're transparent about it, and we talk about all the things we're doing, and there's even more that we're doing now, all the Blue Ribbon Committee, nutrient management projects, and all that, then people can make an educated, decision about, I'm going to use a lake, I'm just going to go to this spot, or I'm going to go to this spot. But just having the blooms can be problematic. Of course, public health issues, there have been a number of studies done on, whether toxins are in the drinking water, and we do find them in the small private systems. There are, potential illnesses. Utilities have to deal with just filtering that stuff out. And, fish and aquatic life, they are working on what those levels are at which they can impact, the toxins can impact the fish and wildlife. But also when the blooms die off, the oxygen level drops and it can lead to fish kills. And so it's not because of the toxins, it's just because of water chemistry.
One of the keys here is to talk about the transparency. That's the ultimate goal of what we've been told the board wants. We're about educating the public. We're about informing them when there is a hazard present. We always try to be mindful of the fact that we are a county that has economic interests. We have people that have businesses, lives, dedicated to how that lake is functioning and how it's being used or recreated on. But at the same time, it's about giving the public the information they need to make a decision for themselves and their families. It's about making sure that we are giving them appropriate information. What I say by appropriate, it is we have a number that we can hang our hat on and say, yes, this is dangerous. Or this is a caution, you should be aware of this. And making sure that it's somehow palatable by the community, they can understand it, they know where to find it. It's all the work that we're doing is about making sure that people know what the hazards are and they can make their decision for what their level of risk comfort is.
And this is all linked to toxicology studies from the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment as part of Cal EPA, World Health Organization studies, and data that's been collected over a number of years, and also ranges that are considered acceptable for various activities. So these are all just using existing standards and recommended action levels. Next slide, please. So moving into health impacts. Oftentimes you'll see, I think some of what that dog is wandering through is probably Azolla, which is what we have on the lake in a number of places, and the Keys. Like if you go to the Clear Lake Keys right now, it looks like a rug, but that stuff's fine. Azolla is just this tiny little plant. It's creating nitrogen in the water. It's actually keeping cyanobacteria from blooming because it's covering up that sunlight and preventing the cyanobacteria from going up and down. So there's some strategies that we can have where it's actually we can kind of control the water and manipulate it in such a way like, don't remove these things. Let's focus on aeration and other things that help.
What was it called again?
Azolla.
Azolla.
Also known as mosquito fern.
Okay.
So, okay, next slide, please. Yeah, and if you go to the Keys right now, that's what it looks like from Highway 20. But I look at it and I'm like, yay, maybe they need a little aeration in there, but Azolla's good. So it is really hard to confirm for sure whether someone got ill because of cyanotoxins. It could be because, they were out swimming in the lake, they went to a picnic, they were out swimming in the lake, but they also ate some potato salad. It could be the potato salad, So when
it's probably the potato salad.
It could be the potato salad. So and people like to blame the lake or blame, Lake Mendocino was just online. Everybody was blaming or saying something about a dog death in Lake Mendocino, and I don't think they've been able to confirm that it's toxins. There were no toxin level. The toxin level is no detect. But it is hard to test people, and so what the illness working group at the state does is they look at the toxin levels in the lake, they look at the people's symptoms, and they make a designation of that. So it's no simple, hey, just let's do a blood draw. Also, the state and our working group has been sending out to medical and veterinary professionals a letter saying, hey, if you see these symptoms, it's already information that's available, resources, and so it's really good to continue to communicate that, because if they make an assumption or they don't test at all or they don't check on things and they don't report it in, then we have a lack of information, a lot of underreporting going on, and research is ongoing about how to best determine whether someone has been exposed.
So two very important points here is the first is the reason we're putting these informational pieces out to the veterinarians every single year. Same thing with the ER doctors. I mean, obviously they've got a lot on their mind. They're doing a lot of work. Every year it's important to get this information in front of their eyes as a refresher to them to say, oh, it's time to start looking for these symptoms. It's time to start asking the question, have you recreated in the lake recently? To explain maybe a rash or something like that. If they don't report it, we don't know about it. So it's really difficult. In terms of what, unfortunately, every single year, it seems like we get a case of a family pet that's passed away. And it is incredibly tragic, and that is not good for anybody. The problem is that it's assumed that it was because of Clear Lake. It was because of a harmful cyanotoxin. It's really difficult to actually get a clear definition as to what caused an animal to expire. It could be dehydration, it could be a lot of things. And the only way we really have to do that is to do an autopsy, which involves sampling the liver after a fatality. Obviously, most people don't want to give up a piece of their liver for while they're alive, go figure. So we can't test them that way. It has to be post-mortem. And that is a really difficult conversation to have with the family after they've just lost a family member. It may be a four-legged family member, but it's still the same to them. And to ask them to give up that family member for an autopsy is an extremely difficult thing to do with those folks. And it is very important that we continue to do that when we can, in the most respectful manner we can.
Next slide, please. So this is from the, I'm sorry, I don't have the URL on there, but this is the illness work group, which is made up of folks from CDPA, Department of Public Health, Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, and water boards, and maybe some others, are tracking illnesses, and these are confirmed illnesses. And the way they've confirmed it is the symptoms, the onset of the symptoms, the water quality data that is present. And you can see Clear Lake, has human and animal, and frankly, I bet all of these counties do. They just don't do the monitoring. Yeah, I'm sure most of those counties do, but they just don't do the monitoring. And so there's no data, and they can't, it's a big guessing game. Next slide, please.
I know, too, you mentioned about the animals in the lake. I was at the dog park in Nice recently, and there was a king corso, big giant guy. And the family that had the dog was mentioning to me that be careful when you take your dog to the lake. At first we thought it was the lake that made him sick, but he actually ate one of the dead carp or something like that on the shore, and it was a bacteria that almost killed him. But other folks, may not have looked that far and figured out that they just assumed it was the lake.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that just to give an example. Yeah.
That's exactly the fight that we're fighting, because people will make an assumption based on a lot of things, right? The Azola on the surface looks like cyanotoxin, right? It's not, but to just an average person driving by, it's let's pretend they're doing the speed limit, 45 miles an hour. It looks like cyano, so they're going to make the assumption that whatever's happening on the shore, the dead carp, the sick dog, is happening because of that. Doesn't necessarily always pan out that way. And just as a general rule, whether you're a dog or a human, do not eat the dead carp. Okay? I'm just putting that out there as a health advisory. That's a free one. Do not eat the dead carp on the shore.
Could that have also skewed the orange for the illness? Do we know for sure that it was?
Yeah, those are confirmed.
Confirmed?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's plenty of, matter of fact, we just got an update from the illness working group about the illness reports that the group is the illness work group is tracking. And, Clear Lake is on there several times, and several of them have already been identified as not HAB related. And so the work group, like I said, they check when the symptoms happen. And the symptoms are, for microcystin, gastrointestinal distress and flu-like symptoms, which is why I'm like, it could be the potato salad, yeah. So there are other symptoms that when the illness work group talks to the people, they get everything. And these are, health professionals. So that map is the confirmed illnesses. And it is about 10% of all the illness cases in the state are from Clear Lake. So it is the largest natural freshwater lake in the state. So I'm not surprised. It also is very popular, well recreated, and it's also, there's a lot of education about, go to the doctor when you're feeling sick, and that is probably, it's underreported in other areas, I'm sure. This slide, there's just, there's there's information for physicians that does get sent out by the state, and also, hopefully our work group or health services and or water resources. And it's all supported. It's a network of information, just like the One Health program that, the county was doing for a little bit. These are all, health professionals that and governments that are working together to communicate information. Next slide, please. And what these are actually also on Big Valley's website, the Clear Lake cyanotoxin page for on Big Valley EPA, and so there are possible symptoms and signs and other information for physicians, and these are known symptoms and signs that are related, potentially related to cyanotoxin exposure. Next slide, please. So there, when we talk about public health, it's really, this program of cyanotoxin monitoring and multi-jurisdictional collaboration has been to communicate the information. And these are the groups that, we've had a number of groups that have been a part of it, and also the letters, press releases, and public service announcements. These are all things that the county's been doing for a number of years to continue to communicate what's going on with cyanobacteria and cyanotoxins. There's several places on the lake where the toxin levels have never been above, have never been even at caution. Rodman Slough is one of them. That side of the lake, good job, whatever you guys are doing. Even though that's where all the sedimentation is coming in, right? But there's some great parts of the lake that seem to never have issues, and other parts where it's a little more challenging.
You notice the tules are on that side, like a lot of that front load right there, and that makes a big difference.
It seems to. Yeah, it seems to. And it's also challenging in the lower arm because that's where the big drain is. That's where the dam is, and, the flow into YOLO.
The culprit of the issue is clear from the problem.
Yeah. Well, and we're sending gifts to YOLO County every day, and, it's a good thing. No, just kidding. Did you have something?
Just a point about the tules. I mean, who'd have thought that, tules, a species pretty important to our lake, would continue to be part of the solution to our lake. Actually, all vegetation is helpful. Even the weeds are helpful to a degree, right? It's important that, whatever work we do in this lake always takes into account, the natural biota of this lake. The species that have been here for 4.5 million years, or even 3.5 million in the case of the tules. We need to keep those things around because they are part of the solution. They are not the problem at all. And they're going to help us big time.
They actually compete with the cyanobacteria. They all eat the same stuff, phosphorus and nitrogen. And so it's better to have weeds than cyanobacteria. I mean, at least in most uses of the lake. So that's why I was like, Azolla, keep it.
Azolla.
That seems to be the only thing I can catch in the lake when I go fishing is the weeds.
And that's a very important experience.
Next slide, please.
Yeah.
These are just the signs that you might be seeing around town, although the county invested in these beautiful signs that communicate cyanobacteria issues. There's pictures, local pictures. There's a QR code that links people, if they use their smartphone, back to Big Valley's website with the data on it. And, if there's what you can see with this caution warning danger signage, which is supposed to also be put up at the monitoring areas when we're in those levels of toxins. It does identify through tested pictures, icons of which is recognizable, should be recognizable for multiple different language speakers, that what is recommended and not recommended. So those are things that this is messaging is used throughout the state. Next slide, please. Work group has been working on a number of things over the years. As I mentioned, well, signage is one of them, is that, we share the signage updates and the toxin updates when we meet. We make sure that there's enough support for those who are sharing information about it. So do the cities need some pamphlets? Do you have the signage to put up? And basically, over the years, we were working out the just any weaknesses that we have in how we communicate and share the information to the public. And, even the work of the all of the nutrient management projects that are coming up, like the algae sonic and the hypoluminetic oxygenation system of UC Davis. These are all things that we do talk about these from time to time, and just like how, whether we're seeing toxin levels, where you have some of these mitigation measures happening. So now that they're finally starting to happen, City of Clear Lake even has some aeration off their shoreline. So we're looking at that and discussing it together. Also, we are used to getting reports from water resources or health services about how many people are calling in, asking about the blooms. So it's just a way to track, the level of interest and concern of the public. Next slide, please. So here is the page where you can see where you can go straight to the toxin data. We just got our July 11th results, so we'll be updating that. There are 2 danger sites right now on the lake based on our July 11th, and that is at Clear Lake Oaks and Elam Indian Colony shoreline. There's also several warnings. You can see that upper arm, there's usually a lot of green, in terms signs. So no detect or low detective toxins. So the upper arm continues to be a great place to recreate, and other areas as summertime is tough for Oaks Arm and Lower Arm. It just is. Next slide, please.
Before we move on.
Yeah, sorry.
So really important. This year, we're kind of getting a little bit of a little reprieve. Usually by this time, we have multiple danger signs across the lake. Pretty much always spanning the south end of the lake. That's kind of the natural flow of the lake, and the south end always gets harder than the north end. But I just want to point out that this year we're getting a little bit slower movement, which is good. I am attributing that completely without evidence to the fact that we have had a lower temperature summer so far. We are still getting a decent amount of wind with that agitation, and we're just not seeing the massive growth blooms that are leading to the high detects. So, hey, fingers crossed, we might actually finish this year with something positive to report in the next year. So just throwing that out there.
Could that also have to do with the amount of water, the rain we've had?
I want to say yes, but I also want to give the big giant caveat to that, which is we had a high water year last year. And with flood levels, and we saw very dangerous levels by June.
Okay.
We had very early detects last year. So this year's not following the same pattern, which, very important point, is why we have to continue with the monitoring in order to build that data set to have a better, more powerful predictive tool. I went on the record and I said that we would have danger levels by July 4th, and I was completely wrong. I'm happy about that, by the way. But
We had it by July 11th, though.
Yep, yeah, she had it by July 11th, so she knew what she was doing. She's like, oh, you think so? I know when I'm doing the sampling. So the point of that is that we have to keep trying to figure out what this model is telling us, and use that tool to be predictive, because if it's not predictive, there's no point to doing it. We have to come up with a reason to move these signs into danger zones. We got to use raw numbers, and we need the monitoring to continue. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming slides.
Also, this data is used by the mitigation groups or the projects that are part of the Blue Ribbon Committee. I've spoken with all of them. We report on the toxin levels on a regular basis, and this information is stuff that they use in order to either calibrate or they're just using this the toxin levels, and we also have cyanobacteria tracking and other water chemistry, and so it's a big body of information that is coming out of all the work that we're doing, that everybody is doing. and it's working together on things. Next slide, please. Summer 2025, ooh, that's really hard to see. 3 sampling events since the beginning of June. We do like to look at whether we're at caution, warning, and danger in each of the arms. So that's what the tables on the right-hand side are. So we're seeing the lower arm has a caution, warning, or danger. 41% of the samples have been caution, warning, or danger, and the Oaks arm, 40%, the upper arm, 11%. So we track that because with US EPA's water quality standard for recreational, they look at 8 micrograms per liter, so it is a different number that they're using than the state does, but they're looking at recreational ability and the impacts to recreation. So we're tracking summertime things just to see when recreation's being impaired by by the toxin levels. Next slide, please. CCHAB is a California Cyanobacteria Harmful Algal Bloom Network. It's been around for at least 10 years. It's a great group to be involved in. I happen to be a co-chair of it right now for the last few years, but it is something that the public's invited to, the board is invited to not only present, but also just listen in. And there's some great research going on with these folks all the time, with our groups. We have a mitigation subcommittee and a fish and wildlife subcommittee and all these different things where we're looking at cyanotoxins and the impacts and how to solve the issues and how to communicate it and all the good research that's out there. So I just put a plug in for California Cyanobacteria Harmful Algal Bloom Network. Next slide, please. Just a quick slide on reporting a bloom. This is on the mywaterquality.ca.gov. Any member of the public can do that. This is where if you do have a dog illness or an illness, any member of the public or any of us can put something in there and report it, and the illness work group will get back with you or also just be tracking what you do. And it's always welcome to get that information or to submit that information. Next slide, please. I spoke about the local signage. It's beautiful and it's installed in multiple places around the lake, so if people see that, they can use that QR code to get to the data, and also just some great factual information on there. And this is maintained. It is on city, county, and I don't think it's on any private areas. I don't know if there's more signs available or if other places would like signs. Not every place on the lake is monitored for toxins, so it's a pretty big lake. So, but these signs are located where the sampling is occurring. Next slide, please. You can see the signage on this map. A couple of private properties, Lily Cove, Blue Lakes. There's also let's see what other, Jago Bay, there's a private location there, Horseshoe Bend, and I think those are the only other 2 sites that don't have signage. They're privately owned. And Cache Creek campgrounds, or Clear Lake campgrounds. And so we do measure at Cache Creek. And so there's a few sites that are not on there. They don't have signage, and these are private properties. Next slide. Outreach, brochures are available. Some great work's been done over the last few years with our work group. This is all work group work, but getting the word out about risk, and brochures are in English and Spanish. Next slide, please. Drinking water, it's really no time to get into this, but the drinking water systems on Clear Lake, the public water systems, have done a great job filtering out cyanotoxins, and none of them had levels that were at an action level. They were all no detect or detected not quantified or just quite low. And so they're doing a great job with that, and they stay in touch with the state. And there's no standards for drinking water for cyanotoxins yet. However, there are action levels that happen at the state, and they do want in lakes where there's a lot of toxins, they do request that the drinking water systems monitor. And so all of the drinking water systems on Clear Lake had to do that in 2021. And even with the highest toxin levels we had since we've been starting monitoring, the drinking water systems did a great job filtering all of that out. The private systems where people have their own pipes in the lake, it's a different story. 50% of them had detectable toxins of the samples that we tested in the CalWatch program. Tracking California is part of that. So the drinking water, the private pipes into the lake, they and the county has done outreach on that, done a press release, recommending that they find other sources of water at certain times of the year. But the large systems that serve most people are doing a great job. Next slide, please. And, with the work group, we had, had identified things to continue to do. Hope that, we'll still work on these things, making sure that communication is happening amongst all of the parties that are, having to answer the public or doing the monitoring. And we want to, as it says, manage the message, really try to ferret out the miscommunication and misinformation that's out there and make sure everybody's got good information to make their own decisions. And we're always open to input from everybody, from the local leaders.
So this is kind of where the work group really shines, is that we help be the local voice. The state's going to report whatever the state's going to report. We have very little control over what the state says or what they choose to present and how they choose to present it. The work group is the local voice. It's the people who are here, who can actually physically see the lake from their workspaces, from their homes, and can actually help draft that message to the community. And it's very important that the local voice continues to be the lead voice through this process.
Yep. I think that's the last slide.
All
And
right.
just some of our contact info. Thank you.
Supervisor Sabatier, if you have questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Not sure if we have been getting an annual report, but we did this year. And hopefully we will continue to get that report. I think it's important to know what the status of our lake is, especially as we're making attempts to do new projects to try and mitigate and reduce the potential for cyanobacteria to bloom in such a way. I have a couple questions and a comment. I guess first off, let's talk about the future of the work group. I think the work group is necessary. I want to give it the flexibility it needs to kind of be elastic in the sense of growing and shrinking as needed. I know there has been some concerns about the number of staff members that have been present at these meetings. I'm okay with reducing it to what's necessary. I believe environmental health is necessary. At least that's what I'm hearing, and I'm in support of that. And if there's a need to invite a public health officer or invite others because of changes that are happening on the ground and that we need to communicate that to a greater audience, I think invites are always available to get more people in the room, but not as a continuous active member of the group. I'm okay with that flexibility and those changes. But I think the group needs to continue, and I like the cadence that it kind of slows down during the off-peak seasons and goes back to meeting more often when it's the peak season. What your conversation about just what the group focuses on is I just want to quickly highlight, and I guess we'll kind of talk about it a little bit later because an item was pulled off the consent agenda, is the importance of some of the projects we're working on. And the most important project, I've said it again and will continue to say it, is the Middle Creek Restoration Project. We talk about the tules and how important they are. Well, when you strip about 1,700 acres worth of tules and marshland, which has the ability to really clean the water, slow it down, let the sediments drop in that location, where then the tules can fight for those nutrients rather than letting it flow in the lake, you have a completely different thing. And in the report from 1994, the USDA Soil Conservation District or something said that we were losing $7 million a year in tourism dollars because of the status of the lake. Now, if you times that by 31, I think it's 217 million without CPI increase, which would be 116% since 1994. So we're looking at almost $500 million in potentially lost dollars to our businesses, in taxes for revenues to the counties and the cities to provide better quality of life. That is how important this situation is. Going back to something that I believe Ms. Ryan may have been involved in, because those private intakes are important, and the cyanobacteria that hopefully they're just using it for their lawn. No,
This
I
is
know.
the drinking water.
There was a gentleman that reached out to me, and I know he was in conversations with you, at least your name came up, from Arizona, who was looking at what was called source water, which would capture water from the air and put drinking water in those houses that have the private intakes. And I believe he was talking to you about also some of the locations on tribal lands in the area as well. Did anything ever come of that? I heard about it, I read about it, and I never saw anything installed and activated. And still, the technology still exists, and it's coming out with more different types. But that technology is also really interesting, especially for those private water intakes, to ensure they have clean water rather than trying to draft it out of the lake when it's really bad. 2009 was probably one of the worst years I've ever seen here. And then 2021 was also really bad, where we had to declare an emergency because of the drought and the amount of HABs that we had in the little water that we had. So
Yeah,
those
and
are my commenting.
in 2021 is when we had the highest toxin level we've seen on the lake at 160 plus thousand micrograms per liter, which is 200,000 times higher than the safe recreating level of set by OEHA. And 2009 is when we had the Lingbia, the one that looks and smells like raw sewage, but nobody was testing for toxins, so don't know what the toxin
Yeah.
levels were. Thank you for bringing that up. There's a lot of things that, a lot of projects that people kind of market and put out there, but they need to do the majority of the work because we're all pretty busy. I really can't remember what happened with that one, but I do remember talking with the gentleman, and they just should maybe come to a Blue Ribbon Committee, and discuss options. Yeah.
Maybe I'll reconnect them with Mr. Weatherby as well, because maybe as a future conversation on how to help those private intakes, they still need water. And I know that we were struggling working with other water agencies to get water to those that are living on the rim of the lake with those intakes.
Well, and this is a reason to support interties to groundwater, and also to, interties to groundwater and interties and extending the distribution system and the service areas of the existing public water systems, who have the training, the treatment level, and the funding potentially, to add more people on and serve them drinking water that does not have toxin levels like that, plus meets the Safe Drinking Water Act. These folks who have their own pipes into the lake we've tested them. They often have E. coli in their water. There's all sorts of problems with their drinking water because they're not set up. They don't have the treatment certifications and all of that to really handle it. It's very challenging water.
Private water intake is extremely challenging, right? It's incumbent on the person who's drawing that water to understand what their water system is capable of. It's incumbent upon them to maintain their water system in a manner that's actually going to protect them and deliver the water that they need to survive. The real problem here is that water treatment is expensive. I don't think there's anybody on the board who would be surprised to hear that Lake County water is extremely expensive. And it is because of the amount of treatment that's necessary to take a surface water and turn it into a drinking water, right? Taking a well water to a drinking water is a relatively simple process, right? It's gone through years and years of filtration before it ever gets piped up. Taking a surface water always carries a risk, a huge risk. And people who are pulling that water out for their survival, for their own drinking water needs, don't always know what that system is truly needed to be. There's a lot of work that goes into designing a system to deliver clean and potable water to a Safe Drinking Water Act standard. And either they don't know, or maybe they don't even have the money to achieve that. It is extremely expensive to maintain those private water intakes, and it's important, especially for the work that we do, to make sure those folks are receiving the most up-to-date information they can get and the most education that we can provide them to help them understand the risk. And if that means that they're buying bottled water to make their coffee in the morning, at least they know. It's important information, and it's important that they, specifically those folks, get that information, because they literally live or die based on whether they know it.
Supervisor Owen?
Just one comment on the dogs and the animals that or suspected of possibly having the die from the toxic. I think perhaps one of the issues with that is the cost to the owner of having the autopsy could affect that. I also wanted to mention that, is this a committee or task force that perhaps our water resource director should also be a part of? Are you a part of this? Oh, okay, good. And then I also wanted to thank you for being really proactive and notifying. I know you've notified me a number of times whether there's been an issue in my area or even a threat of an issue in our district. And I really wanted to let you guys know that I really appreciated it, and I'm sure everybody on the board does, that when there's been something come forward, whatever it might be, that you have reached out to us. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you for the work you're doing on this.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to come up and speak on this item, this presentation?
Hi, Susan Polyukonis with Tracking California. In addition to everything I talked about before, I led the state illness work group for 5 years and was the liaison with the CDC and the national program. So I have the picture of how important this work is, not only in Lake County, but it is truly, truly a model for many other places within the state, the nation, and internationally. Sarah and I have worked on a number of scientific manuscripts together about a lot of what was being described here, most recently about the lake water intakes and the problems there. These problems are not unique, but these solutions and the proactivity and the communication and the collaboration, they are unique. And so I just really wanted to call that out and emphasize it. And so you all would know and express my appreciation as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, we got one more guy and then I'll...
So one of the reasons we brought I'm piggybacking, admittedly, is we want to ask the board for some guidance, because what we have is a very loose, hey, form this group and talk. Great. We've been talking for 8 years now. It's time that we need a little guidance from you guys. And what specifically I'm going to ask for is
Greg,
for you.
there was still one more guy.
Oh.
I know you're...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
He knows me. He'll just throw something.
I was going to say he did that intentionally. I don't take it personally. Board and everyone else that's here, thank you so much for bringing this up as an issue and something that I was thinking about, and I'm sure other very smart people here are thinking about it. One seems really obvious is that we as humans are only going to do so much to change nature, right? So the ability to steward nature is really where the answers are. Starting something that will continue is a process that begins naturally, but we could steward along the process. So point being, the Tules seem like a big aspect to a long-term solution as opposed to trying to band-aid over smaller issues. With that, I'm thinking about the hitch as well. And it seems to me like the problem with the algae is related to the bacteria, and the bacteria is related to the Tules, and the biggest issue with the hitch is the spawning rates, and the spawning rates are really based on the environment in which they're growing in, which goes back to the Tules, right? So there seems to be a crossover here where the answer for both of our biggest issues goes back to the Tules, right, in nature. So with that, I'll let the people that are much smarter than I am figure out how to draw those things together, but I did want to mention it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, I'll close it and then go ahead and finish.
So what I'm asking the board to consider today is we'd like to have you really look at what you would like this group to achieve. What are the asks and the deliverables that you would like us to work towards? It's not enough to just talk. Something has to happen. There has to be action behind talk. Otherwise, we're just talking and we're wasting time. And we don't have that time. We need people to be aware of what's going on, and we need to do a job. So I'm asking you to help us define what that scope is. I'm also asking you to help define what you want us to present to you and how often you want us to present to you. And I am asking for this in a little bit more of a formal way than just us throwing together the group and then coming at some point. I want to have a little more structure to what we're doing and a little more definition as to how you would like us to go about doing that. Environmental health over the last 2 years has invested very heavily in this group. At one point, I had 5 of my staff workers, 5 out of 14, working on this project. Not full-time, but still a fairly significant investment for a small department, with no revenue source to support this. Any work that we do in this is coming directly out of realignment funding, which, as you're well aware, is very strained this year. So we have pulled back a significant amount of time and investment. We are now working with one staff member, me, on this group at this time, but we'd like to... Environmental health absolutely wants to continue the work in this, but we would like to take a step back and not necessarily be responsible for the leading of this group, at this time while we're dealing with the budget that we are dealing with this year.
Supervisor Pyska?
I think we all agree that this work is really important and needs to continue, but do you have recommendations on how to proceed and what that might look like? I think that would be better, easier for us to understand rather than kind of come up with it on the fly. Because you've been doing the work, you have been developing the relationships, you know what your budgets look like. If you could come back to us with a work plan, and then maybe we could go from there, that'd be really helpful.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Just a thought process. I'm sure I'll get some phone calls about this. It seems to be a shared burden to deal with, and this is not which is what people are probably going to say, it's not a water issue. It's an issue of the land masses being developed in such a way that a high amount of sediment is coming into the water and impacting the water, meaning every jurisdiction has some accountability as to why the water is displaying or exhibiting what the water is exhibiting. Is it possible to, from year to year, move it to a different jurisdiction who is the lead? That way it's not always burdened to one jurisdiction to hold on to that lead and feel like they are burdened with having to deal with staff time. Is that a possibility? That's something you can come back with.
That is absolutely a possibility. Anything's possible. With enough dedication in it, we can do anything. But it's you talked about flexibility in this work group, and if there's anything, this group is all about flexibility, right? We meet once a month during what we call the off season, and then once we start getting those hits, we start talking every 2 weeks. And at some point, we were even talking every week, and informally, we were talking every single day. When we were at the height, when we had that huge hit in 2021, trust me, that was all that was being talked about. So yeah, flexibility is absolutely key to the work that we're doing, and we want to keep that flexibility. The challenge has been man hours, staffing hours, and how do I fund that across multiple people, multiple jurisdictions. Each jurisdiction that's contributing. I can't speak for Pawan, but he's nodding his head, so I think he knows what I'm about to say. There is no funding source dedicated to cyanotoxins. Any money that we spend in this realm is coming out of somewhere else, some other portion of our budget. In my case, it's realignment. I'm very fortunate that Anthony has been so kind to let me have as much money as I've ever wanted and never says no.
I think, too, that...
Just throwing that out there.
Might be...
Anybody who knows me knows that's not true.
Okay, so that is not true.
This may be, you might have already talked about this or tried this, but the Blue Ribbon Committee, I know it fits some of the, the details in the bylaws or in the whole initiative. It fits, the lake is the most important thing when it comes to that. It could be another subcommittee or something like that could be a potential funder for this, if we could see if that could be something. Yeah, in the Risk Reduction Authority as well.
Are you offering, just so I can better understand, that the Blue Ribbon has the capacity to lead this committee by staffing it themselves?
Or a project to promote, to try and get the funding to do
Right,
that.
right. Which would take some time, but yeah.
But it's a long-term thought. if that
I don't
makes sense.
disagree.
Yeah.
May I mention that?
Yes.
In the hazard mitigation plan, this is listed as a natural hazard. And so I believe the county has identified some projects associated with mitigation with that, and so that's another potential source.
And Supervisor Pyska mentioned the Risk Reduction Authority.
Yeah, the Risk Reduction Authority focuses on all risks. We do have water purveyors as members, and I think for the tribal nations. So that's another avenue to look at. We can get you on that agenda to talk about it too, and then maybe come back with some of these plans.
Good.
I just want to say I agree with Supervisor Pyska in the sense of we can come up with all the ideas, but we're also not sitting down in the same room that you are with the knowledge and understanding of what you deal with when you have these meetings or when there are high levels of toxins in the lake. And so please come back with suggestions so we can look at it through your eyes rather than just look at it through our eyes.
I just wanted to add that not with the funding, but I think that those would be some great sources to be able to look at that for the funding of it. But for what we were saying, you were asking us for direction and coming up with a plan. Well, you need the data to be able to come up with a plan and setting your goals. And it's looking like, and I don't know, that Middle Creek restoration may be a big part of that as well. But setting your goals would be obviously to be able to reduce an effect, and that's going to come from a lot of the monitoring you're doing.
May I just also say that
Yes.
the Clear Lake nutrient TMDL that is from the regional board says there's 100 years of in-lake loading and food that's already there that is cycling through this. The Middle Creek Restoration Project is going to stop a lot of the majority of the new stuff. However, with UC Davis's research of identifying that it's the low dissolved oxygen, the high temperatures in the lake, but basically the low dissolved oxygen cycling those nutrients so that cyanobacteria is available, or cyanobacteria is growing due to the nutrients. That is not really linked to the Middle Creek Restoration Project.
Okay.
So it is, and they've identified 100 years, and so that's so that's why some of these mitigation measures, like the Sonic, LG Sonic, and some of the other things, are like basically trying to interrupt that feeding cycle and growing cycle, and it's
Right.
very expensive, and it's not feasible to do it all throughout the lake. So it's all going to be kind of worked out.
So as I understand it, it's not anything that's coming in as much, but you would reduce the amount coming in.
Yeah,
But that there's so much already here.
exactly.
It's looking like it's going to be difficult to mitigate. Impossible?
That's the problem. And people used to, that is the difficulty.
Okay.
It's the very nature of our understanding of our nature as it is, of our environment. Things that we used to take for granted, we now know better. We didn't have the information in the 60s and 70s that we have today. We were building this problem many years ago. Today we understand the problem better, and I promise you, we don't understand the problem a tenth of what we need to. Right? Today we have some information, but we certainly don't have it all. Right? Tomorrow we're going to know more than we know today, and the work that is being done is really more about arresting the damage and taking responsibility for what we've already done and going forward and saying, okay, let's make better decisions. And here's the information we're going to hang our hat on for making those better decisions. It's at least something. It's going to take a long time. There is no easy road. There is no instant, thing. We can't put bubblers in the entire lake. It's the largest lake around. You can't bubble the whole lake, no matter how much you want to. There's no amount of funding that's going to do that.
Right.
So we got a lot of work ahead of us.
So if you're listening and you're tuning in, please help us educate, especially when you see something on Facebook that you've learned here that isn't accurate. Please put out that information so you could help us get the message along and we can get moving on a better direction for the lake. And thank you for this presentation. I don't know if you have, go ahead, Pawan, please.
Hello everyone, it's Pawan Upadhyay. I'm the Lake County Water Resources Director. I would like to briefly address the comment which was made earlier about the nexus between the Tules, the Clear Lake Hitch. I just want to mention that we have already been doing it and the board has taken the action regarding that, like the lake bed ordinance, which is chapter 23. The Tules are protected under that. So it's not, so if there are Tules in somebody's property, they need to call us before they take them out, or like, so it's protected. The plant should not die for that. Like they have to take certain precautions, like if it is within their property and it's a nuisance for them.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
If you could just talk to them offline, because
Yeah.
we got to move on.
Yeah, and similarly for the Clear Lake Hitch, it's the board has declared the emergency for that, and
Right.
there is like funding and research which been supported by the board.
Thank you, Pawan. All right. Yes, just touch base. We got to move on. We're a little behind. So do you have what you need to move forward and come back and give us, and we can move forward on the next discussion on this? Do you think we're okay?
Yeah, we can, we'll bring back some of our recommendations as we move forward.
And a budget.
Excellent.
And a budget? You'd like a budget as well?
What are you looking for to support it?
Millions of dollars.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, I can always ask.
I hear
Just say no.
I hear Anthony says yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and letting us present to you. I know we took a little bit of your time, but it was worth it, I promise.
Thank you.
Thank you.